All right, welcome to 305 guys on the 5 Reasons YouTube channel. You might also hear this on some of our other platforms. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick on 5 Reasons Sports. I got Alex Donno. You can follow him at Alex Donno. We'll be with you for the next 15 to 20 minutes as we are every Tuesday and Thursday around the sports spectrum in South Florida. As much as we've tried to avoid it, today we're going to talk about the Heat. We are sponsored here by our friends over at Prize Picks. Make the season interesting. Use the code 5. Put down $5, you get $50 to play right away. PrizePicks.com, Google Play Store, or the Apple App Store. PrizePicks is the official fantasy partner of the 5 Reasons Sports Network. Get in on their Taco Tuesdays, their Flex Fridays, all of their other promotions. Actually, they just updated the app, so it's a lot easier to maneuver, to find all of the possibilities on your favorite players. You might find a demon, you might find a goblin, lots of stuff you can do. Go to PrizePicks.com, use the code FIVE, put down 5, get 50 to play right away. All right. We're going to talk about tanking today, and we're going to talk about it because I've never seen the fans so aligned on something that is not happening. That's the first part of this. So I want to address that with you, Alex, and then we'll get into, and we'll do more of this on future 5 on the Floor episodes, but whether it makes sense to have a additional pick or keep their own pick this year at all. So there's really two different conversations. I want to start with the tanking part of this, and I'm just going to say this flat out: they're not tanking. They're not. I know fans are so accustomed to this on-court product at least looking somewhat competent that they cannot believe that the team is this bad. But right now, at the current moment, they are this bad. I don't know if this is some form of denial or what, or simply based on the fact that Terry Rozier's played a lot of minutes. But I can't really, when I ask fans, why do you think they're tanking, other than the losing part and playing Rozier, they don't have an answer for it. And I can just tell you, Alex, that it is not their intention to tank, so to speak. They don't really know how to do it. They admit that they suck at it. And beyond that, when we talk about tanking, the coach is not going to tank. The players are not going to tank. Tanking is an organizational decision, which basically is a way to tilt the playing field against yourself. So, for instance, Utah not playing Lauri Markkanen, which they just got fined for. That's tanking. Yeah. I saw the Jazz come in here a couple of years ago, and like they were leading the Heat through 3 quarters, and then all the players who had contributed through the first 3 quarters were not playing anymore. That's an organizational management decision. Certain guys stay out longer when they're hurt, or you don't work them back in. That's tanking. What the Heat are doing is not tanking, and we'll get to some of the comments on this. They are just struggling. They're struggling badly for a variety of reasons. But as we'll get to in the second part of this episode, they don't even view it. Most people I talk to inside the organization as a good thing to have their pick this year. The Golden State pick is another matter, but there are reasons not to have their own pick. So they are not doing this intentionally, and there's really no reason to do it because no matter how bad they are, and I'm looking at the schedule, an exception of a couple of Washington games, I'm having trouble finding wins. They couldn't even beat Charlotte last time. But no matter how bad they are, Alex, they're not going to drop further than 10. So they are stuck between 7 and 10. Right now it's looking like 9 or 10, and that's where they're at. And even if they tanked it all the way to 10, which may happen on its own here, they could absolutely win 2 play-in games because the teams they're playing are not very good, and they can end up in the playoffs anyway to get swept by Cleveland most likely and still not get their draft pick this year. So there's really no reason to tank. Anyway, as you watch them, do you think they're tanking?
They're unwatchable, but no, I don't think they're tanking. But again, like the word is, you laid it out so eloquently. You know what tanking is defined or redefined in the NBA dictionary over the last couple decades or so. Tanking means you're doing something wrong on purpose. They're not doing that. We got to find another word for what they're doing. I mean, you mentioned struggling. I think they're just spiraling. Like they're not tanking. Tanking would imply that, you know, from Pat on down to Spoelstra, on down to the players, that there's some grand conspiracy. And yeah, teams have done this before. Just the Miami Heat have never done this, but teams have absolutely tanked in this league before. We've seen it time and time again, that it's some kind of an organizational conspiracy that we're going to purposely try to win fewer games. The Heat are not doing it on purpose. Like they are.
They're not. I wish they were.
And I can't blame Heat fans for feeling like that's happening, because I mean, how often does this franchise drop 5 straight games and look pretty hopeless in a lot of these performances? Like, it's not something we're accustomed to with this organization. It's a once in a blue moon kind of thing. So yeah, I get it why to some folks it would feel like a tank, but it's just a spiral. Now, it all kind of ends up having the same effect. But then, like you said, I mean, unfortunately, this team is not in a position to even be able to lose enough games to draft Cooper Flagg, who, had the injury scare today, but I think he's going to be all right. Maybe they'll sit him for the rest of the ACC tournament. Flagg looks like he'll be ready to play by the NCAA tournament. But yeah, you're not going to lose enough games to be in, to get enough ping pong balls to draft that dude most likely anyway. So really, it's you can tank for the 10 seed, which doesn't do a whole lot for you. So, I mean, unfortunately, Ethan, I'm trying to watch these recent Heat games, and it's difficult. Like, I'm actively having to find other things to watch. I've had the ACC tournament the last couple of nights. I'm trying to find new TV shows. I've binged pretty much everything that's available, but I'm digging like to the early 90s to find. I started watching an old show that people recommend to me called Twin Peaks that I never watched, but I'm getting into that.
Oh, you never watched that? Oh, he recently passed away, I think, too. I'll find you some shows to binge instead of watching. Have you started Severance yet?
Oh, Severance, I'm all over it. Yeah, I'm so into Severance. After I watch the episodes, I watch Severance YouTubers to catch all the Easter eggs, because that show is so mind-blowing. There's no way I can catch everything.
Well, you got one more. You got one more, and literally they're dropping it on Friday during the Heat Celtics game. So I've just given you your alternative instead of watching a 32-point Celtics win. Although the Heat will probably be more competitive in that game than we expect. Take a lead and then blow it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, they'll probably win that game they'll have a 20-point lead and then they'll blow it. Is what it's probably
right. Or you can watch Running Point. That's new on Netflix, and that's kind of a Jeannie Buss type ripoff about the Lakers. She basically takes over a team because of other issues in her family. It feels like, again, the Lakers, they even call the team Los Angeles. She looks like Jeannie Buss. It's Kate Hudson. So there you go. I've given you another suggestion. So yeah, you can try. It's a comedy. It's cute, whatever. But they're not tanking. They're not tanking. Like, they're not doing it. There's no, and when people are like, well, here's evidence that they've tanked in the past. I want people to really look through this evidence. They had a couple of opportunities to tank. Okay. 2002, 2003 season. That was a season, that was a transition season. They had just drafted Karan. They still had Eddie Jones. It was pre-Wade. They had just had a season before where they kind of did nothing. They brought in a bunch of old vets like Travis Best and Cedric Ceballos and Rod Strickland and Jimmy Jackson on like one-year deals. Then the next year they drafted Karan. They were bad. Before the last game of the season, they were in Toronto. That was in Toronto. I wrote a column saying you need to lose this game, because they were in competition with Toronto for ping pong balls. They could have gotten to the 4 instead of the 5. I got a call from someone with the Heat who's still there who said, "Why are you writing this shit?" I said, "What do you mean?" He says, "We're not going to do that. We don't do that. Don't even suggest that." I'm like, "Well, you should do it. You should do it." They didn't do it. They won the game. Okay. As a result of winning the game, they fell from 4 to 5. At 4, they would have taken Chris Bosh. At 5, thankfully, it wasn't Chris Kaman. They took Dwayne Wade. They believe this thing about the basketball gods and all this kind of stuff. There was another year, I guess the Philadelphia game, they could have moved up more. They played Michael Beasley a bunch of minutes. People thought maybe they tanked. They don't. I don't even remember Yakuba Diawara. This wasn't even about tanking. Okay, well, he hit a shot that nobody wanted him to hit. He hit a shot in like an overtime that they ended up getting Boston instead of Atlanta in the playoffs. This was during one of the Wade and no one else years in the late it was either 2009 or 2010. They don't believe in this. And then people are going to say, okay, 2007, 2008, they tanked. They did not go into that season planning to tank. They still had Shaq. They still had Wade. They were playing everybody, and then UD and Dwayne got hurt, and they shot the entire thing down. All right. So I'm just saying, like, this, they don't go into these situations to tank, and they don't know how to do it. Now, they're getting very good at losing, but that's not tanking. Okay.
Right. Yeah.
And they don't do it. And The Dolphins have done this at times. We know that. But they are the Heat are not going to go that direction. And here's the other thing about this, Alex. If they were really tanking, they'd be playing more of their G League guys. They'd be
Yeah,
shutting people
sure.
down.
They wouldn't
I
be
think they
playing
should
Terry
play their
Rozier. I
G
mean, I
League
guess
guys.
maybe people would say they would play Terry
No, they
because he
would be
gives you
48
yeah,
minutes.
he
Yeah,
gives you
48
he
minutes.
gives you the best chance to lose. Yeah, you're right. But it's still
Yeah,
like I would like to
but-
see more G League guys. If we're gonna lose anyway, give me more of the G League guys.
well, then why not? I mean, they haven't shut Bam down. They haven't shut Tyler down. They brought
Yeah,
Wiggins
right.
back from injury. I don't think he stayed out any longer than he had to. I mean, Spoelstra's cycling through players and rotations because
Yeah.
I feel like in his head he's still trying to get them ready to make a play-in push, which most Heat fans are not even going to want once they get there. And so and Marcus Hunter mentions Basketball Gods awarded the Spurs Wemby for taking. I mean, the Spurs, for all the talk about, yeah, exactly, and Duncan, for all the talk about this model organization that the Spurs are, well, yeah, a lot of that
Yeah.
was, if you go back to how they got Duncan in the first place, forget Wemby, how they got Duncan in the first place, Greg Popovich took over that team during that year. He was not in charge. He was not the coach at the time. He was in the front office. They took over the team. They played Dominique Wilkins on one Achilles, like 65 games, okay? Totally shot, late 30s, to make sure that they got up as high in the lottery as they could, and they ended up taking Tim Duncan. The Heat are not going to do that stuff. They're just not going to do that stuff.
And I'm gonna die on this hill that I like it better the way that the Heat do it because I never even want to be that organization that allows your and I'm not even big on the whole karma thing. Like you laid it down and like the whole basketball, even the whole basketball gods thing aside, because even though I can be superstitious, but that is a little bit silly to me. I just like the idea that you're part of an organization that is always going to try and squeeze every possible ounce out of their players and never do anything other than giving 110% to win every basketball game, because I believe as soon as you give that up, and if you let the philosophy of tanking or dropping games on purpose, if you let that creep in, I believe that can corrupt the mentality of a franchise. I do. That if you become that franchise that is willing to not do your best and to to try to game the system the way that it is, then I believe that's something that can actually corrupt the fiber of your franchise. I'm a firm believer in that. So I fully respect the Miami Heat for that mentality. And like you said, it has worked out for them in the past. But in this case, they don't need to try to lose, which is the sad thing about it.
Well, right, and then people would say, well, that's the poor reflection on what they've done lately because they have players who are going to lose without trying to lose. But that's where they're at. And
Yeah.
I made the point, and we had Sean Rochester on 5 on the Floor today, and he agrees with me that I would rather see Josh Christopher and Isaiah Stevens and Keshad Johnson at this point, not to tank, but just to see what you have. If you have them on two ways, just play them. It's not, I mean, Jovic is out right now. Jaquez is not performing. So, okay, you have an opportunity to look at some of these other guys. So look at them. I'm fine with that. But that's very different. That's very different from what tanking is. All right, on the other side of this, I want to get into these two scenarios and I want to throw them at you because fans, this is the other part of this. Fans are very about now. Okay, they're very about now. They do not want to wait. And so for all the fans who talk about, oh, we're in for a rebuild and all this, they're not. They're not. And the Heat know they're not, by the way, because it's like the fans want them to lose, but then as they're losing, are all like they're all losing their shit. Okay, so it's a combination. It's a combination of both. All right, so let's get to our sponsor though. You don't want to lose your house, your place of business, particularly during hurricane season. So you got to check out All Pro Construction Builders. They're at allproconstructionbuilders.com. It's 305-484-4429, 305-484-4429, or All Pro Construction Builders on Instagram. This is Danny. This is his family. They have the best materials. They do the best job for you. If you mention 5 Reasons, not only do you get a free estimate, you get 5% off your entire order. So they service the entire, the Tri-County area with Dade in the middle. Monroe, Dade, and Broward. Check them out. It's Danny and his team, All Pro Construction Builders. And again, you get 5% off if you mention 5 Reasons, 305 Guys, or 5 on the Floor. As you can see, they're right there on Southwest 216th Street in Miami, Florida. All right, let me go to these two scenarios with you, which is if the Heat miss the playoffs, and again, this is after the play-in, okay? So if they do not qualify for the playoffs after the play-in, let's say they're the 10 seed, they win a 10-9 game against Chicago, and then let's say they go into Atlanta or Orlando in a road game. This is not insurmountable, by the way. For all the Heat fans, they'll never win. Like, I'm looking at the schedule and saying they may not win again this year, and then I could see them absolutely losing every game the rest of the year and then winning the 2 play-in games.
Yeah, I could see that as well.
Right.
And that would be the perfect scenario to piss off the fans.
Right? Okay, I could absolutely see that happening, right? And if that happens, they don't keep they don't keep their pick, right? And then they go into Cleveland and they get beaten 4 or 5 games. Okay, that's where we're headed. I know Heat fans don't want that scenario because 68% of them, according to a poll I put up today, said they would prefer to keep that pick this year. This is independent of the Golden State pick, which they're going to get now because the Warriors are going to make the playoffs, okay? So it's just a question of where that pick falls. Jimmy and Steph are making it worse right now because it's going to be somewhere between now closer to the 20s instead of in the teens.
Thanks a lot, Jimmy.
Yeah, for that and among other things. And so, and look, he's playing well, so give him credit, and they're winning with him. Okay. But here's the part of this. Okay, they're getting that pick anyway. Even while getting that pick anyway, Heat fans, and I get it because you want the now, right? You want it now, and this is a very strong draft beyond Cooper Flag. This draft, we've talked to our guy Adele. He says there are 6 possible franchise-changing players in this draft. Last year, he had 1, Stephen Castle. Okay, wow. So he has, and Castle, by the way, is going to win Rookie of the Year. So Adele knows a little something, okay, because that was his pick before this season. So with that said, okay, they're going to have a pick anyway. But Heat fans still want the pick this year, 68% of them. Even though getting the pick this year means that you're going to lose protection on the pick next year. And because of the Rozier deal and the way the stepping rule works, you're going to lose protection on the pick in 28. You're also going to have fewer picks that you can trade if you decide, and we know the Heat have had trouble doing this, but if they decide to go in for a star. And yet 68%, even while that is explained, and I don't think everybody totally understands it, still want the pick this year. I can tell you, when I've talked to people inside the organization, not the top levels on this, most of them don't want the pick this year. They want the Golden State pick, but they don't want the pick this year. Would you want the pick this year?
Count me in to the 32%. And I say that because I still trust this organization. You laid out the scenario very well. I don't want to lose those protections. And I still I trust the decision makers, even though you mentioned you're not, this isn't from the highest of the high, but I would imagine the people who are right below that probably understand what the highest ranking officials want. So yeah, I want what the Heat front office wants. And if they feel that the juice is not worth the squeeze to keep the pick this year, then count me among the 32%, not the 68%. It hurts me a little bit though to think of it that way, but this is chess, not checkers, Ethan. So count me with the 32%.
I'm kind of with you. I'm torn on it. I will acknowledge that. I know Barry tweeted that he's torn on it. I know Wes Goldberg of Locked On Heat is torn on it. I don't think this is an easy thing. We're going to do a full episode on this on 5 on the Floor, but I don't think it's as simple as just get the pick now. I understand this draft, but that's one of the reasons you picked up the Golden State pick. And I know the Heat insisted on getting a pick this year from Golden State. Now, unfortunately, Jimmy continues to play well. The Warriors continue to play well, and that pick keeps dropping. The Heat front office did want Terry Rozier. That's correct, Brendan.
You know what, Brandon? You're right. Count me with the 68%
now. With the exception of the one, yes, the picks can be drafted. Well, they can be they can be traded after the draft pick is made. Yes, Marcus, that's correct.
Yeah.
But this is where I'm at with it. Okay, if they didn't have the Golden State pick, I don't think there'd be any question that I would say just grab the pick this year.
Yeah,
I sort of trust Adam Simon with the way he's drafted to find a player between 18 and 23, 24, especially in a draft this strong. If you look at what he's managed to do in the teens in the past, and even I still like the Jovic pick at 27. If you look where Jovic was drafted, he was also drafted at lower than he should have gone, and which I give the Heat credit for that. So I kind of trust Adam Simon to find a player at 20 who some other team might take at 10 or 11, or might be worth taking 10th or 11th. So that's why I'm kind of I'm split on it. Otherwise, if they didn't have the Golden State pick, I wouldn't be split on it. And part of it tells me Just get the 2 picks this year. This is where the 68% is. Get the 2 picks, you package them, you use them. Maybe you package some of your other young players because you've got these young players coming in on controlled contracts, and you just roll with it from there. At least you know where your organization is. I see that side also. But here's why I want to close with this, and I'll let you have the final word. I don't it's enough of a toss-up that the idea that the Heat would be tanking for this doesn't make any sense. That's what I'm saying. The idea that the Heat would be trying to guarantee that they don't come out of the play-in and make the playoffs doesn't make sense when the other alternative, there are some IRA who believe the other alternative is worse. That why would you want to push yourself into something that at least on the surface, it seems like 6 of one, half dozen of another. That's why I don't get it, and I don't think they're going to do it.
Yeah, listen, I guess in the meantime, I want to see more positive Pelle Larsson minutes. That was a bright spot from the other night, and I want to get as much as possible from some of the young pieces who may or may not be cornerstones of this franchise in the future. So that the way you described it all kind of feels like you're stuck between a rock and a hard place, and there's not really a very desirable outcome. So consider me, halfway checked out on this season of Heat basketball, but I'm hopeful for the future, Ethan. And I say that as someone with several decades of Miami Dolphin fan experience. So I know how to condition myself for being hopeful for the future. That's where I'm at.
This comes in from Rockin' On, and this is a sad place to end here. Going to lose 2 unprotected to OKC and the Hornets, pay a max to a guy who scores 6 points and gets bodied by Zubac, and ran the guy who took you to 2 finals out of town. Topsy-turvy world.
Yep.
Watch Severance tomorrow night. It's premiering on Apple TV. Don't watch Heat Celtics.
I am excited. I love that show. I can't believe.
We sever our. Here's what we can do. Can we sever our brains in the way that they do? So all we remember are Heat highlight moments, and we totally once we come in, our innie can't remember that our outie has had to experience this Heat season.
Ethan,
can we do that?
I don't want to torture my innie like that. Like I don't want to create essentially, because when you have an innie, it's essentially a whole nother person that you've created. I don't want to torture my innie with like, hey, it's like, when this is a little bit of a spoiler, when what's her name? The wife is like, she's only one of her severed personalities only goes to the dentist, and that's all she does. She's like, I was just here, and he's like, oh, that was 6 weeks ago. So it would be worse. Like if I made my innie, he only exists to watch Heat basketball this season. I don't want to create a person just to do that.
Can we go in the Panther room? Let's go in the Panther room. They have the different rooms there. The Marlins room doesn't exist. It's being renovated indefinitely. We should do like severed rooms, right? Like the Dolphins room has not been functional since Marino was there. So since the mid-90s.
But my Dolphins innie though is like very hopeful. My Dolphins innie is 2-on, and it's every year is our year. He's a little delusional. Dolphin innie. The Heat innie is just he's like the guy in Clockwork Orange where his eyelids are just pried open and he's got to watch that video over and over and over again.
I didn't think we'd go into severance talk. Anyway, enjoy that on Friday. Skip Heat Celtics. But listen to the latest episodes of 5 on the Floor. Have a good one, everybody.
See ya.